And you then want to quiet your mind and give up naming or guessing or all your attachments. This is what Ingo Swann says. You have to give up analytical overlay and just describe the pure images that come to your mind. And those images, magically, will pertain to what you're about to see. Now, we don't know whether it pertains to the object as it's hidden away or whether it pertains to the object that will be put in your hand in a few minutes, because we know that you have the ability to look into the distance as well as into the future. But this mental process that we invite you to do, that is the key to learning remote viewing, is just what the Buddhists call giving up conditioned awareness. Our conditioned awareness is the awareness we have that's overcome with all the suffering and betrayals and things that we've learned in the course of our lives that cause us to give meaning to what we experience. So conditioned awareness is where we live our lives in guilt over the past and anxiety over the future and never get to experience the present. So we want to give up that conditioning or be aware of it, reside in the present, quiet our mind, give up naming, and then on the remote viewing scene, you are able to describe and experience the object with regard to your awareness as you move from this conditioned awareness, which is where we normally reside, into naked awareness. You then have the experience of spaciousness. Your awareness moves out into the non-local realms, which is where the information is. So although it would be silly to say remote viewing is a spiritual path, I'm definitely not saying that. But the mental process of quieting your mind to do remote viewing is very much like what the Dzogchen Buddhists teach you to do as a path toward experiencing the spaciousness and timeless awareness. So that, as I was studying Dzogchen Buddhism, which is this path of pristine clarity that came out of the third turning of the Buddhist wheel, I was struck by the great similarities between what the Buddhist masters had to say in the 8th century, the great similarities between what they said and what we tell people every day in a remote viewing workshop. The vocabulary was strikingly similar about giving up naming and guessing and the mental noise in a desire to experience the spaciousness. So, in fact,
Russell, you used two little words there that are actually huge: giving up. Let's talk a little bit more about that process of that giving up and where it comes from and where it leads. Because it's very important to my listeners and to me to understand exactly what you mean. When you give up, Russell, what do you do?
It's a recognition. It's a Vedic teaching. I mean, this is all very old stuff.
Very old, yes, I know.
Not new age. The Vedic teaching is that you already have within you whatever it is you're looking for. That we're all looking to experience love. And what we discover when we finally give up the chatter is that we have the capacity for that love and the experience of love and the divine within us. Now, this is what the Thomas Gospel that was really illuminated by Elaine Pagels. But Jesus describes that the kingdom of God is within you. The kingdom of God is who you are, that you don't need an intermediary, and it's in opposition to the dualistic view. Most Judeo-Christian religions say God is huge and he's out there, and you're puny and you're out here, and you have to somehow reach from where you are way up to where he is. It's a very dualistic view. The Buddhists are a non-dual point of view, and they say you have within you, there's no separation between you and the divine. You have within you what you're looking for. The divine is available the spaciousness is available, and what you have to do is call off the search. What you have is right at hand, because the separation is an illusion. So the whole thing is a very non-dual, non-local point of view.
So you have to call off the search.
It's the idea that in the remote, there was a very interesting book written by the historical figure who brought Buddhism to Tibet, the guru Padmasambhava. In the 8th century, he wrote a book which you can still buy. And, of course, every author loves to see a book that's in print for 1,200 years. It's very inspiring for a writer. But his book is called Self-Realization Through Seeing with Naked Awareness. That is to say, when you give up the searching and the naming and the guessing and move from conditioned awareness to naked awareness and this timeless experience, you then simultaneously take steps in the direction of self-realization. So in a way, and I discovered this book just as I was finishing up my book, Limitless Mind, and was really amazed that the two books are quite similar. My book is A Guide to Remote Viewing and Transformation of Consciousness.
Right.
And this other man's book, 1,200 years before, was Self-Realization and Seeing with Naked Awareness, which is very, very similar in title and concept to what I was writing about. And his view of experiencing naked awareness is just what Ingo Swann has taught us as the guidelines to learn to do remote viewing. So in my book, Limitless Mind, I really spell out just what we did at the Stanford Research Institute program, teaching Army intelligence people how to get in touch with the part of themselves that's psychic to do remote viewing.
And it's a book that I've read many times, and in fact, when I was doing the author tour for Communion, which was a daunting and difficult experience, I read that book constantly the whole time on the planes and in the hotel. And one of the things that struck me about it and that has stayed with me is the description of the really, I guess it's the best word, is the ease of doing this. It's not really an effort in any sense that we think of effort. It's rather more of a giving up of effort. Does that make sense? Can you illuminate that at all, or is that sort of in another direction?
That's absolutely true. That's why the remote viewing in America was much more successful than it was in the Soviet Union. That you can't make somebody be psychic. You can't punish them if they're not psychic. A person has to feel very safe and surrender into the experience. When we went to Russia in whenever it was, in the 1990s, we visited some of the famous Russian psychics. And during that period, what we told them is we worked with a famous Russian named Juna Davidashvili, who was a healer. And what my daughter and I told her is that we will take responsibility for the experiment. You just have to do what we tell you, describe your mental pictures, and our experience is that this will turn out all right. Don't worry about anything. If you just describe what you're experiencing, we're asking you to describe scenes in San Francisco that will happen in a couple hours. So you're looking 10,000 miles into the distance, 2 hours into the future. You will see pictures. No one knows the answer right now because the target location has not been chosen. Just tell us what you're experiencing right now. And that was such an impossible, crazy-seeming request that my daughter was a Russian speaker, and Juna just said to my daughter, I give up, and then went on to describe what she saw, which was a merry-go-round on a pier in San Francisco, and she drew the merry-go-round and saw the horses with the glass eyes, pointy ears and very, very unusual target that she described excellently, even though it was thousands of miles away. What we had asked her to do was so crazy and so impossible, we didn't know the answer because it wouldn't get chosen, but she then made a wonderful series of drawings of that target, showing that a first-timer, as she was, working through a translator, could still be very psychic if the necessity level is high enough.
That's quite amazing. If the necessity level is high enough, and in a sense, if you've given up enough. You know, in the latest copy of the New York Review of Books, there's a long skeptical review, or a review of a favorable review of a skeptical book about bogus science by
Freeman Dyson,
which ends quite surprisingly with 4 or 5 paragraphs. The review does. The review's by Freeman Dyson. About it's saying essentially that he thinks the paranormal is quite real, but that it's inaccessible to scientific study. And
yeah, I found that, I know Dyson slightly, and I found that article very disappointing. It's a lengthy article by an extremely brilliant man, showing that even a brilliant man can be profoundly ignorant. That he's not opposed to ESP. He just has the view that nothing's happened since the 1950s when
right.
J.B. Rhine was doing card-guessing experiments. So Dyson's whole view of ESP research is whether you can guess a circle, a square, or a star. And he knows nothing about remote viewing. He knows nothing about the Ganzfeld. So he says this stuff is all very boring, doesn't work very well, and that's the point of his article.
Right.
My plan is I'm going to send him a copy of my book, which has a lot of data and pictures from the remote viewing work and explanation of the classified research and the many, many things that we've done, all the bibliographic citations. Not that I expect New York Review of Books to change their mind, because they're really a skeptical, sort of old-line socialist newspaper.
Right.
I don't expect them to become sympathetic to ESP.
Well, they won't, because one of the most basic tenets of Marxism is that there is nothing but the physical world, and these are older people who are profoundly Marxist in their views. Simple as that. I mean, I'm not saying they're necessarily economic Marxists, but they are intellectual Marxists.
Yes. Now Dyson, I think there's hope for, because he's really highly intelligent and has some psychic relatives that he talks about. And he just says, I guess nothing has happened since all this card guessing, and that's very boring. So I thought it was a lengthy, disappointing review by a very smart but uninformed person.
But it gets to something I would like to talk a little bit more about in just a second. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We'll be right back. Russell Targ, a legend in our time, Limitless Mind, his most focused, most empowering book ever. Don't miss it. Get it from the unknowncountry.com store. This is one of those books that you really need. You can actually use in the most practical possible way to take yourself beyond where you are now. Russell Targ, Limitless Mind. It's quite real. Get it from the unknowncountry.com store.